Are you looking for a life of freedom and flexibility? Do you want to have as much success with your family as you do in business? Here at the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast, we break down the barriers and bust the myths that are keeping you from living your best life. You deserve a thriving family, rich faith, and business success. Visit us at efmlife.com to connect. And now, welcome to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast.
Today, let's talk about designing your life around your core values. What are your values? Now, we're not talking about the last episode on a hierarchy of major important values. Okay, this is not about necessarily God, marriage, family, business, your church involvement. This is just about you, who you are, who God created you to be, your unique self. If you had to design the life that you wanted around your core values, what are those values? What do you identify as you personally? Do you like fun? Do you like peace in your life? Do you want structure? Do you want flexibility, productivity, spontaneity? I mean, there's so much out there that makes this unique fabric of who we are as individuals, who we are as a globe spinning around of all these different people. So who are you? And what's important to you? What makes you come alive? So in this episode, we just want to dive in to this, to tackle the topic of who are you and how can you design aspects of your life for the better of what it is that you want to accomplish. So guys, what are your initial thoughts here as we just jump into this important conversation?
Well, my thought is that I love this conversation. And this is the reason why, as a coach, I love assessments. It just kind of peels back the layers of the onion and lets us know who we are at our core. It's just so much more deep than who am I? Well, I'm a father. I'm a son of God. You're one in a billion and no one is like you. And how are you made? You know how it talks about like we were designed before the foundation of the earth to do good works? We've been given a personality with different desires. We need to be in touch with these desires and what we think and what we know about ourselves if we're going to go out in the world and make an impact.
Absolutely. And let me just frame this conversation a little bit too. So those of you that are saying, well, the most important value in my life is Jesus. It's God. Like I can't leave him out. He's on the top of my list. All right. Can we just move past the Sunday school answer? And maybe this will be helpful. Let's look at these values as spokes on a wheel, and the center of that wheel is God. So he flows through every one of these values that we have. Can we just let that go?
Yes. Jesus! He's the answer.
I release it.
And let's talk about the rest of the wheel, because this is where the rubber meets the road, pun intended.
Oh, that's a good one, Chris.
We didn't even plan that, I promise.
Did not. But hey, I mean, seriously, we know that we are centered on this relationship with God. And so now that we know that, now that he created you for a purpose. He created you for your life. And so what does your life look like? What are the things that you know about yourself that will never change? I mean, Jamie, Michael, let's talk a little bit about each of us individually. What strengths, what values do we hold true to who we are? And even the values that are shared by us. I mean, this is part of why we're even doing this podcast, why we have these great conversations throughout the week. There are things that we share in common. And so, what does that look like? What do each of us identify as some top values, and how have you designed your life around that awareness?
Yeah, well, right off the top of my head, I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have flexibility and freedom in our lives. So those are two values that I know we all share together. We also love to travel. We also love beauty. We also want to thrive in business. We also have pretty high integrity as well on most days. So those are just some things that I think have brought us together. We've We value all those things. And I think we were having a conversation and actually had an aha moment that, wow, I think everyone at this table has those same values. Let's explore this a little bit more and see where it might lead.
Another way that I would say this is usually when we like something about somebody else, it's because we either want to be like them, we feel drawn, or we already are. So like, who are your heroes and what about them makes you want to spend time with them? Something that I just cannot get away from is humor. I love laughing, and that's part of being a human being, of having a good time and laughing. If I'm going to be myself, I love having there be a light side of things where people can give a chuckle, and it's just life-giving. So if I'm not being myself, I'm all serious and boxed in and just all, intense. And instead, the question I would ask you is, who are you really when you are more yourself than you ever are? Like what about you is unchanging? And don't get confused about like, my value is the way I want my family to look in 5 years. Like, you have a vision, and that's awesome that you can see the way things are going to be. But what about you will never change because that was put in you by your creator, and it's irrevocable, right? It's like that scripture says the gifts of the Spirit are irrevocable. But I think the person who you are supposed to be when you are most yourself is something that you cannot dodge. That is just who you are and who you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Who
very
are you?
well said, Jamie. And there's another thing I want to say as well related to this. So if you are in a tough situation, maybe your job is not life-giving, maybe that's kind of sucking the life out of you in this season right now, and you might say, well, all I want is to be able to not do anything, maybe even escape to a beach and park my butt on a chair and drink a pina colada, and that is what I value.
Wait, that sounds fun. Come on.
Wait, mojitos are way better. Or margarita.
Yeah. But it's an important distinction because you might be wanting to escape something and then confusing your method of escape with your value. It's not necessarily what you truly value.
Yeah, so what you're saying is you're on like the wrong seat on the wrong bus. And so you think that riding on no bus and drinking a mojito would be the way to go. But there is a bus and there is the right seat that you could get on.
Well said. I like that analogy.
And you could be sitting on a bus in the right seat drinking a mojito. That would be even better, right?
Just
Well,
not
it's not the
driving.
driver's seat.
So we talked about this before. It leans into like your zone of genius or your calling. A smaller version of this is like who you are at your core.
Yeah, and I like what you guys both said too there about identifying who you are, what these values are, and then also looking for people in your life that share those. I mean, that's just the beauty of this podcast, this relationship that the three of us have, and sharing all these things. I mean, Michael, you outlined a few things there, but just boy, we love these travel experiences, time freedom. There's so many things that we hold dear that I think help us. I mean, Jamie, you mentioned how you love humor. I love humor. I'm not that funny, but you need an audience, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And Chris, if I could reflect what you just said, it's like all the things that really give life. That's what I heard.
That's true,
right? That's why these conversations are just fun, because we're talking about things that are meaningful and they give life and they have results it's like that more abundant life.
Yes. So each one of us has gone through this exercise on paper. It took about 25 minutes, and we all have our top 10 values cemented in granite, written down for all of us, all the world to see. So it's pretty easy 10-step process. Get it done and you'll be done. Right, guys?
What?
I was going to say, I forgot that homework assignment. Shit.
I think one of my top values is not being involved in that process.
My point here is we're all in process. Like we're growing and figuring this out as we go. I'll give you an example. When I first started my coaching business about 5 years ago, the only thing I wanted to do was have a full load of coaching clients and be busy coaching. And if that's what I was doing for my business and that was it, man, I was going to be in my sweet spot, loving life. Well, guess what? I'm there now, and I'm recognizing that, hey, maybe this isn't exactly aligned with who I am and what my values are. So this is very much a process. And sometimes because we haven't accomplished something yet, and we see others that have, and in our own insecurity, we reach toward those people and become convinced that those are our values and that's what we want, just because we haven't got there yet. So there's a process to this.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mike. You almost have to. It was like a famous thought leader said that failure is a step on the road to success. Who is that? I forgot who it was, but probably like Jim Rohn or something. But
that was my biggest fan, Michael McGreevy. I have it hanging in my office.
It's like a moving target. Like Ruthie and I have done all these kind of extraordinary travel, and I meet people over and over again that are, what's it called, where you full-timing, where you basically get like a Winnebago and you go around. If you talk to any of the people that do that, they never sort of experience what they thought they would experience, right? They had this value to travel, and then it's totally different than what you thought it was going to be. You can't just say like, our family loves to travel, and so we're going to like sell our house and go buy a Winnebago and do that for the next 30 years. This is like a chapter on your journey to move toward who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you both bring up there, is that your values can change a little bit too, right? I mean, there are seasons of life, or there are things that happen that maybe make you reprioritize some values. So I don't think we're saying that, do the exercise like Michael talked about and then go like, order some barnwood door that has all 10 values listed in iron and, this is going to be firebranded forever. Like, make your plans, make your ideas of values in the sand, knowing that there's going to be waves that come in and wash that away. And you look at ways that, I mean, even just get on the same page as your wife, right? Your wife and you may have slightly different values, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are a lot of guys, I know this is true in entrepreneurship. There are guys that are like ready for variety and they want growth and they want to expand. They want to do this stuff and take some risk. And they've got a wife with a big security gland. And she just wants to know that everything's taken care of. And so there's ways you have to kind of have those conversations, right, with those in your life that matter most.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, they almost become part of your values too when your wife has differing values, right? Like they have to. If we're serving and honoring our wives, we have to take a serious look at what they value and build a life together around the values that we share.
That's good. I have an example of that. So travel is really important to both Ruthie and I, but what I've figured out is adventure is why I like to travel, and Ruthie likes to travel for exploring. And there's such a difference between adventure and exploring. When we travel, we'll try to put elements of both of those inside of our trip. Michael, you kind of inspired me there. It's like the two of us are coming together, and we're so much better together. And it can be a win-win. Like we're not fighting against our spouse's values. It's like, how can they align to be a smooth concoction, or like a roux, or what do you call it? Like
You're just trying to get back to your concoction and mojito analogies that have been permeating since Cuba.
But this is what you do. Like I'm not against taking those assessments and coming up with your top values. What are those top values that you just can't shake off? This is a process where we're going to get closer and closer to who we're supposed to be and the life we're supposed to live. When you take those ingredients and put them together, it creates an awesome concoction that is an extraordinary life, and that's what we're all after.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, this is a good time to talk about that. I mean, give us an example of when you and Ruthie travel now, and you know that they can experience, but yet exploration are the two things that you value. How do you blend that? I mean, what's a trip look like, or how do you guys approach a future trip, knowing that you want to have both of those, and you give each other the ability to do those both? Because I'm listening to you, taking notes here.
Oh, you're going to run out of ink like you did on one of the podcasts with Michael dropping wisdom bombs. So now it's my turn.
Now it's Jamie's turn. Yes.
Although I got to make sure this is really good here, but I think it really depends. I know that's the worst answer ever, but it depends on what you're trying to get out of the trip. And so I'll tell you guys this, that I was approaching these trips out of like a scarcity mindset even like 2 years ago. A couple weeks ago, I was in Cuba. I was like, Diego, let's scope this out because we're going to come back here. And before, it was a big checklist, a bucket list. Like, life is short, it's painful, and like you got to suck in all the joy because you got a dead end job waiting for you when you get back home. Now, the way I approach it with Ruthie is we're like, what do you, almost that perspective thing. Like, we're flying home. Like, what did you want to get out of this trip? This is an awesome opportunity. Like, what do you need to check off in order for this to be an amazing experience for you? What happens is her answers don't necessarily negate what my answers are. She might want to get some R&R and stay back and be alone and read a book at the beach, and I can go have an adventure with the kids or something. I'm always, maybe I'm just the eternal optimist here, but look for win-wins. Why can't Michael and Lydia and the kids go on a trip and everybody have their values honored on that trip? There's no you don't have to choose. It's not a fixed sum game here. This is a pie for everybody.
Yeah, Michael, why can't you do that? Oh, wait. Oh, you do.
You can. Yeah, I mean, you have to be a little bit flexible too, right? That kind of fits into our flexibility value there. You can't pre-plan out an entire vacation and say that everything's going to go perfectly the way you want it to go. You have to be open to different members of the family doing different things and allowing space for other people to pursue things that they love that maybe you don't love so much. Not every single activity has to be done together while holding hands. Like, you guys can split up and do some different things. But man, make sure you're hitting all those values though, right? Make sure at least everybody is getting a chance in that picture to really do things that they love.
Yeah. And that's a good point, Michael. I like one of the things that I heard out of what you were talking about is respect for each other. Is that when we respect the beings and the individualness of each person in our family, there's so much value in that. That's why we should give ourselves permission to separate and be ourselves.
Do you mind if I make a t-shirt that says respect to the beings? I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, you can coronet yourself as a respecter of that.
But this is what we're talking about, right? Is knowing, know thyself and know your wife, right? Because, hey, your values, while they may not be the exact same values, you have to walk through this life and this adventure together. And so knowing how you complement each other, and in this example, just a trip or vacation, how can you get the most out of that hits the values that are important to each of you? So, I mean, how does knowing yourself and knowing, we've talked about what do we know about ourselves and our values that will never change, how does that affect other areas? We've talked about in this EFM adventure that we're living, your enterprise, your family, and your marriage. How have you guys had a chance to know your values, who you are, and then design, right? This is the whole point of this episode, is designing your life around those core values. What does that look like, or what's changed maybe in recognizing those values in how you've approached your business?
One thing I can say is that it's a central part of decision making for us now. When we have an opportunity come up, or a trip we want to take, or a business venture we want to do, or something we want to do for our family, I'll literally go and grab my list of values, which is in process, and we'll run through that list and see, okay, does this opportunity or this thing line up with the things that we value the most? And you can do that every time, but it just triples, quadruples the amount of time you're going to spend making that decision. If those values are thought through in advance, pull that sheet out and say, it's right there in front of you. You might see 2 values that are really being satisfied to your top values and say, okay, this is really a good fit for who we are. Or there might be 8 of them that are in conflict of your values, and it's an easy no in that scenario. Just wanted to throw that in there before we talk about the next 3 steps.
Yeah. That's good, Michael. I like that. And I'm sure I've seen this in your personal life, but as you keep pulling that list up, it builds that strength where when opportunities come your way, sometimes you don't even need to pull out the list because you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so in, because I believe in everything that's about. I love where it is and who's involved. So what I would add to that is I'm thinking of the word culture here. I'm thinking about enterprise, family, and marriage. What is your culture? And it can be a tricky thing, right? Like sometimes you'll see a business or a family and you won't know what their culture is because they haven't really mined it and figured it out. Like when people come to our house, I have a goal that they sort of like feel something very unique. It's like they have a sense of home and belonging, but it has a sort of flair that we have. And so I like the people listening to this podcast can't see this, but I got 6 guitars hanging on my wall in this office full of books. I've been very intentional to make this office kind of, I feel like it's me a little bit, like a slice of Jamie Slingerland, like who I am. Like I could have these guitars like in a guitar case in my attic, but instead I decided to like mount them on the wall so that I can just like be around something that is dear to my heart. And I could have these books on the wall like in boxes. What I would ask you is like, what in your physical environment describes who you are? Your top values, if they're order and peace, do people feel that when they go into your house? What is that culmination of like you and your spouse together coming together? You get a new sort of flavor. And people should feel that around you. They should look at your Facebook and sort of get to know kind of what you stand for and who you are. Am I making sense here? Help me out, guys.
Big time, Jamie. That's awesome how you laid that out. And walking in your house, I've been in there before. I can feel what you guys are about by the messages you have on your wall, by the guitars that you have hung up, by the music that you have playing, the food that you put out. It's creates a feeling that really does reflect your values well. I know one of the things Lydia and I truly value is being able to host other people. We love having people over. And so whenever we meet a new couple or we have someone in our house, we want them to feel immediately that they're being taken care of. Like, is there a drink in their hand? Is there like a meal coming? Are we showing them affection? Or how do they feel when they step into our house? That's always a question that we have. And we've talked about that in advance. Like, this is something we really want to do. We feel like it's our gift. We feel like it's like something that we really love. So we better make sure that when someone walks in our house, they feel that way.
That's really cool. I didn't realize this until just now that all 3 of us have hospitality as a top value in our marriages, because that's a big thing for Alicia and I. We love to have people over. We're kind of the house in the neighborhood or the house in our group of friends that just host stuff. And, you know, we bought this house 6 years ago and we invited a bunch of people over the night before we were going to paint the house inside. And we asked them each to come with several verses relating to service and hospitality and just whatever. And in every single room in our house, every single room, from bathrooms to every common space, there are multiple verses written on that sheetrock, written on the previous paint, that just speaks that life, because we want the same thing you guys just talked about, where people come in and they feel like they're at home. They feel like they're welcomed and they're invited, right? There's, in fact, Bob Goff talks about how you can be invited to a place. That's way different than being welcomed into a place. And that's the kind of experience, aura, environment, ethos that I think the 3 of our families want to be known and known for.
That's awesome, Chris. Every husband and wife that will go after this and sort of figure out what their unique value combination is has something to offer their community and their group of friends. So I think it's really cool. We just figured that out right here. That I think that's the reason why we talked about what we want to do with EFM, and every time we talk about live events, we all have a smile on our face. We're just like, to do something where people could have an experience. It's because that's all we want to do together most of the time anyway. It's just get together and
travel, experiences, places, adventure. I mean, we all love that. And that's just kind of who we are and who God's created us to be. And I think that's something that we bring to other guys' lives.
And to round this thing off, we want to involve our families with that too. That's that F part, right? We want our business to include what our wives value, and we also want to pull our kids into this as well so they can experience it at the same time. So really, this business fits all those values in one.
Yeah, that's true. I remember just a couple of days ago, we're driving home, we're talking to the kids about some of the stuff, and like even just the practicality of needing to get somewhere to get home for school, right? I'm like, you know what? We just don't value, as a family, we don't value you being locked in this classroom penitentiary for, did I say that? Classroom for, 8 hours a day. Like, we would much rather you being able to go and experience this cool stuff we did for the last 10 days, bring your work, your little some school stuff with you to learn and read along the way. But that's just something, that was just an example of something we said as a family, this is a value we have, and experiences are more important than being locked in a classroom.
Mm-hmm. So you're not a fan of the government schools?
Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Another episode.
So let's wrap up, guys. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make a point. Like, what happened with you is that you guys started talking about what was most important, and it actually ended up being sort of a counterculture thing. And I would actually submit that it's when we get together with our spouse and kind of go after these values, it could almost be a little bit scary what could happen, because it might be so unique that you just don't see other people doing anything like what is your authentic version of living out your values.
Truth.
And guess what? That's kind of the plan, right? That we would live our own unique life, that God has a plan for us that's probably a little bit different from everyone else's plan.
Yeah. Well, I keep thinking about, people always say that you spend your money on what your values are. And I like talking with you guys about this, because I see all these people spending their money on, driving around $500 car payments. And I'm thinking, like, the things that I want to do are just very different.
Yeah. People say, right, and we'll land the plane here, that if you were to look at your calendar and your checkbook, you'll know where you value and what you value in life. And so we just want to talk about this, in this episode of designing your life around your core values. What are those? Really take inventory, take some stock on what it is that you think God has created you to be. What are some things that will probably never change about you? And how will that affect how you approach your career, how you approach your marriage, your family? What makes you you? What makes you come alive? Process what you think you want to do, what you're doing now, and what you want to become. And I'd be remiss if I didn't even say, feel free to reach out to us. By the way, and you've heard it in the intro here, but we have this new website, efmlife.com. Connect with us there. You take an assessment, look at what it is that you're doing in your life now. And if you want to talk more about this, there are personality profiles out there. There's tons of resources that we can provide just to say, hey, here's something you can do to get a better sense of who you are and how you can design the life that you want to live.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit efmlife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.